bring
Y'all
that
are
up.
mean, man.
Does anybody want to hear the story?
No, they don't. That's a stupid story.
It's a funny story because I paid Chance to do it. Actually, it comes out now. No, we are at Easter.
Conflict.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about conflict.
That's what you did. It was so
And
fun.
this is how conflict gets started.
You're not gonna let me tell them. It was so funny. We were outside. We had Easter outside, which we do that every now and then. And you know, he wears this lapel mic, right? And while he's playing, and Chance forgot to turn it off.
I forgot to turn it off because I don't trust them ever.
Oh, it was you. Yeah, he forgot to turn it off. Anyway, he was just singing, and we're singing.
I don't really sing along. I just kind of hum along because I keep up with the song.
Funny.
And the song going.
Me and Kitty, like I don't remember who all was singing that Sunday. We were
sound?
like,
Terrible.
What is that? You know, we're singing La Hallelujah.
Appreciate that, Chance.
Oh, it was good times. Good times.
It was great.
How many were here last week? Yes. Yeah? Okay, so you kind of got the gist of what's going on, what we're talking about. We're on part 2 of barriers.
What we were talking about if you weren't here, because now you're making everybody that wasn't here feel left out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
You got to bring everybody up to speed. She's a rookie.
I am a rookie teacher.
But I don't know what we were talking about, so let's go on. No, I'm just kidding. We were talking about intimacy. And intimacy is that total giving and being vulnerable, totally giving of yourself to someone else. And it's really in... a lot of people think of intimacy as sex, but I think sex comes from intimacy. It's really... You can have sex without intimacy, but it causes problems.
You see? I'm losing my voice. That kid's... I said, you better go to class.
Already bored. I don't even remember what I was saying now.
It was great.
You can have sex without intimacy, but it just... See, that just out of the blue now.
My name is Celia. This is Todd.
We don't have a clue what we're doing, and that's fairly obvious. Now, what we want to talk about is what this whole thing is about is marriage in the modern world. And so a lot of you guys may be struggling in marriage. You may have it together right now, but like we talked about Friday night, man, just because you got it together now don't mean you're going to keep it together. It's always coming around, and it's different. Even a marriage series, we did a marriage series probably in 2002 or 3, somewhere around there, and then we done one a lot of years since, a lot of them, but man, it's just, things have changed in just the last, 5 or 10, really in the last 5 years, things have changed a lot, and marriage is a lot different now. The struggles and things we go through in marriage now are a lot different, but the principles seem to stay the same. And so we want to just share with you some things that we've discovered in our marriage. We've been married for 25 years, February, and we figured out some things. We figured out a lot of things to not do. We figured out some things that work, and we figured out some reasons behind those things. When the older you get, the more you're aware of the pain of your mistakes. I'm not saying that the smarter you get, but you become more aware that the choices and the consequences of the choices we make are painful. And the older you get, the less you like the pain. Like, I think when you're young, you're a little resilient to pain, but you get older. And so I think it's the same way in marriage. We learn in marriage what causes pain and learn to avoid some of those things. And so kind of to follow up on last week or to finish, somebody asked me last week, you said you had 2 points and you only said one of them. Well,
'Cause we got
sometimes
all
I just
excited.
do that because I'm ADD a lot. So I'll start talking about one thing and end up talking about something totally different and not even realize it till somebody says something about it. But we did have a second thing we were going to talk about, and that was a block to intimacy.
Like, and it was conflict avoidance, which we did very well in the beginning of our marriage. For probably the first 2 years, like I told you last week, we never had a fight the first 2 years we were married. We were apart a lot of
Well,
the
we
time.
were apart 18 months. So.
Yeah, so that was pretty easy. But
If you want to not fight with your spouse, just
Yeah.
don't be around them.
no, that's not.
No, that's not the point today.
No.
I forgot.
No. He was in the, if you weren't here last week, he was in the Marine Corps, so he was deployed a lot. So we weren't together a lot the first years. But honestly, I never voiced my opinion, I guess. Which
I thought she
stemmed-
was perfect.
Yeah. I
She
was
worshiped
perfect,
me.
but yeah. I never voiced my opinion, and as I look back now, 25 years later, I look back now and realize the reason I never voiced my opinion, I think, is because I didn't trust him. I didn't trust that he would stick around if I voiced my opinion. Does that make sense? Like I didn't know that then. I just was being the happy, little 18-year-old wife, or however I was. And
She was 18.
Was it 18? Whatever. So I was just trying to be the happy,
I swear, Judge, she
And-
was 18.
But anyway, I never voiced my opinion. And then when I started voicing my opinion, things got really
Let me tell you
scary.
what we're getting at. Intimacy is that thing that we're seeking in our marriage that makes it go over the top. It's that place where we are completely, and the way God says it is like the two become one. And the intimacy is where I am totally given and totally trusting and totally vulnerable. And it's like as if we become one. And that's what we want in our marriages. We want that relationship and we want that intimacy. We're drawn and attracted to the idea of intimacy. It's kind of part of our DNA. It's the way we're created. God is, He uses marriage as a picture of what our relationship with Him is. He wants that intimacy with us where we're totally vulnerable with each other. And this has got deep roots. Like back early in the story, remember in the Garden of Heaven. Eden means heaven. So when you go back to the Garden of Heaven, man and God were there and they were naked. It says specifically they were naked and they weren't ashamed. And this was before the fall of mankind. And what got broken in the garden, people say, well, it was sin or death was introduced or whatever. What was broken was intimacy. We became clothed or felt the need to be clothed before God. We could not be that way with God or each other. Now, a lot of people are like, man, I'm fine being naked. Well, whatever. Please don't. Who cares if you're fine with it? Ask anybody else. They're not. But it's in the metaphorical sense. It's very hard to be naked before other people. We always have. We're always have barriers. We're always clothed and we're guarded and protected, and so that intimacy was in our DNA. It's who we were created to be with each other and with God. And that's the restoration power of the cross. When Jesus went to the cross, He restored all things, making intimacy with God possible again. Remember, there was a veil in the temple. The temple was clothed. The Holy of Holies was clothed. And so there was an intimacy face-to-face with God. Remember when the worship series we just finished, we were talking about the house of David and how the house of David, the tent of David, was way different because the tabernacle always had a veil and God was here and people were there. But God wants people to worship Him face-to-face. He wants that that nothing in between us, and that's what intimacy is. And it wasn't just that it got broken with God, but it got broken with each other. And so the restoration of the cross didn't just restore mankind to God and make intimacy possible with man and God, but it also made intimacy possible with human beings. And so, not that we will ever be perfect, but we can be completely given and vulnerable with each other, just as we can with God.
What happens a lot of the time is you may go to your spouse, it could be the man or the woman, but you may go to your spouse with a conflict, and you may, a problem, and you say, I'm upset whenever this upset me, blah, 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 and or your spouse feels that you're mad. Oh, she's mad again, and he's like, just tell me what I have to apologize for, and it really does, that avoids the conflict. It's just whatever, I'm sorry. Just tell me what I need to say I'm sorry for, and I'm sorry. And what happens over time, whenever you avoid this, or you don't actually listen to your spouse and hear them out as to what is your conflict, what happens is, every time I see my spouse, I don't see him anymore. All I see is that unresolved conflict that he won't listen to me. So all I'm looking at is he doesn't care about me. He doesn't trust me. I didn't trust him, but I don't see my loving husband anymore. I see you don't care enough to sit down and listen to what I have to say. There's something wrong, and you need to listen to it. And so you carry that, and it becomes this huge barrier in between you and.
But it's an illusion, because the illusion is we can avoid conflict. Let me tell you a truth about life. You cannot ever avoid conflict. Your life is going to have conflict. It's a fact. And if you were here Friday night, you understand the depth. I'm not going to go all the way into the depths of how this works, but you cannot, in your life, as long as you're living and breathing, you will not be able to avoid conflict in your life. Peace is not even the absence of conflict. Peace is a way of being no matter what your circumstances are. And so it is actually a fruit of the Spirit of God. It is a way of being. And so as you think, wow, my marriage, I'm starting to feel conflict, or in your relationships, I'm starting to feel conflict, or within yourself, internally, man, I'm starting to feel conflicted. There are internal or external conflicts, but the deal is we all are going to deal with conflict. Everything that happens in your life, like two people cannot continue to live and get one day older without some kind of change. There's going to be internal change, there's going to be growth, there's going to be external influences on those things. And anytime we change, and that creates a friction. And I think we got this idea that conflict is bad. Right? Like if I say conflict, you would say that's a negative thing. But when you push the brakes of your car, friction is a great thing, right? Like we want friction to happen because, if not, we're going to a speeding, spiraling death. And that's not good. The actual brakes, when you push the pedal, there's friction, and that friction is a good thing. It stops us. Well, without friction and without conflict, we don't grow and we don't become, and it basically things fall apart. It might be good to write this thing down because this is really important. Conflict is always, and she's taught me to not say always and never, but I'm going to say always today. Conflict is always a change agent. Even if it's a little conflict or a great conflict, no matter what it is, conflict is always a change agent. And change is growth. Change is good for us. Change is healthy, okay? And so conflict is always, always, always a change agent. Now, what happens in conflict is that in every conflict there reaches a climax of conflict. And conflict can be internal, external, it can be felt, it can be experienced, it can turn into wars and battles and words and fights and things like that. But conflict always reaches a point of climax where a decision is made. You get that? Like, we know that in every conflict we deal and we argue, we do whatever, but it's going to reach a climax. And at that point of climax, a decision is made, and that decision dictates how the story comes out. It dictates how or where we go from here. And with every conflict and every climax, there's a decision. And the result of that decision is that your life is going to get better or your life is going to get worse. It's going to be a life-giving or life-taking. It's going to be building or tearing down. And there isn't really a middle ground. We don't go through conflict and make a decision and stay the same. And so we have to learn to deal with conflict. You cannot avoid conflict. And I think that's one of the things early on in our marriage, man, was just a nightmare. Because in both of us, the avoidance of conflict caused
more conflict.
Well, it caused a deeper rooted conflict and maybe even an internal conflict. And it really grew us apart. The decision being made to not have conflict, which was a decision. You can't avoid a decision either. Like when conflict comes, you're going to make a decision. And if your decision is to avoid conflict, then all you're going to do is drive wedges deeper and you're going to push apart further. And it's just not healthy. So as that all became or began to surface, then it got explosive and there was a lot of friction.
Well, and I think you can identify with this. The way you grow up has a lot to do with how you deal with conflict. And when I grew up, things were different in my household. Where anytime there was a conflict, it wasn't just let's talk it out. It was like let's bring out the guns. I mean, no, it wasn't that bad, but it escalated, to a screaming match, every time. So whenever we got married, that was another thing. I don't want to have conflict. I don't trust that he's going to listen to me or to stand by me. Number one, I don't trust that we can talk this out because I've never seen a conflict happen where it didn't come to, screaming and hollering. And every single time there was a huge conflict, somebody left. One party left, or I did. I ran, but no, one party would always leave. So in me, my baggage, so to speak, is if we have conflict, somebody's going to leave at that point. I didn't know how to stay and talk it out,
I think, and for me growing up, like the way my parents raised us and in our house, still to this day, which was the crazy thing for her to step into, is that there aren't any dark places. There aren't secrets. Everything is wide open, out front all the time. Like it's just spill everything. And there's some things that's not great, but it does.
I think it's
at least everything's on the table all the time.
I think that's a good thing. I mean, you can't build a marriage on a lie, from the big get-go or whatever. So I think it's good that their family's like that. It's just.
And then that was a big struggle because I knew something was wrong, and then it's like so frustrating, and it's like, just tell me what's wrong with you. You ever get like that? It's just like, say it, and then it's, nothing.
Which means you better know already.
The arms crossed. When you cross your arms, it means you're checked out, you're shut down.
Yep. Except for with me.
That's why I'm always like this.
I'm always cold, though.
And she's always like this. I know what it means, though. Because after 25 years, you start reading that mind and you just start apologizing and you start at A and go till you hit it.
There's usually a list.
Here's another thing about conflict. I was reading this morning. This is in James, and I love James, man, because he's one of those like violent
Hardcore
preachers, man.
preachers.
He's a yelling preacher.
He's a T.D. Jakes. That's what I picture.
And so James in James chapter 4, he says, "What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it this, that your passions are at war within you?" And the word passions, is it your pleasures? Are you seeking pleasures?
Wait, where are you at?
James chapter 4.
See, he does this to me every time. He goes so fast. For what?
Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus.
I'm in James finally.
James chapter 4, verse 1.
1? Okay.
It wasn't that important that we all needed to
Turn in your Bibles. It was important.
turn in the scripture. No. I was just reading this. It says, what causes fights and quarrels among you is that you have these pleasures that are at war within you. You desire and you do not have, so you murder. You covet and can't obtain, so you fight and quarrel. And I was thinking, man, this is it. This is where conflict comes from. Conflict comes from my life being about me, right? I mean, what else causes conflict other than me wanting my way and people around me not? We're like, look, I set myself up to be God and this is my kingdom. Why isn't everyone worshiping me and doing what I think we should do? And so then we have conflict. And then every one of us, and when we get really honest, guys, we're all self-consumed. Just at varying degrees, but we're all self-consumed. We all want our way. We all know deep down that we're right, and we all know deep down that everybody else is wrong. Those are things that we just don't say out loud because that makes you look like a creep. So, what causes conflicts is that it grows, my self-centeredness grows to a point that conflicts with her self-centeredness. And here's what I found about conflict. You might want to be aware of this. That in every conflict, everybody is a little wrong. And everybody's a little right. And just in general terms, you're not all right and you're probably not all wrong. But we have to grow from the place of self-centeredness, and this is where intimacy comes in, love comes in. If I love you, then I consider you. I sacrifice. I lay down myself. See, what we don't get is like we get married because we like somebody, and we like them because they meet our needs, because it's really about us. But love is the basis of what marriage should be. And love means that I think so much of you that I'm willing to lay down myself, my desires, my wants, to give and make your hopes and dreams come true. And that's scary, very, very scary and very tough to do, because you trust that she feels exactly the same way. And when you both do that, then you are in love. And a one-sided marriage, one-sided relationship is tough because there's a giver and a taker instead of a giver and a giver, and then it becomes out of balance. So then you start to deal with all of the conflict that comes with this. And how we resolve conflict is by empathy, by putting ourselves in other person's shoes, seeing things from their point of view, understanding that she is the way she is because of her past or things she's going through, or just that she needs therapy or, shock treatment or lobotomy or whatever it takes, to make her right. And then she might think the same thing about me, which is wrong.
Let me give you two keys. Let me give you two keys to this. how to help. This is what helped me tremendously. And I don't get it right all the time. I don't get it right half the time. But this is 2 things that really did work or helps. Number 1, ask God about your spouse. Ask God, let me see him the way you see him. Not the way I'm seeing him right now, but let me truly see him the way God sees him. And God, how does God see you? Oh, he loves me. You know, he wants the best for me. I'm his child. So is he. You know? So that was another way, or that was one way. In fact, I just say, you know what? Let me see him the way you see him, because I'm getting in the way right now. And then the other thing is to release your expectations. Because we put expectations on people all day long, all the time, and they don't even know it. And then we get mad when they don't fulfill it. Well, that's not their fault. We put those expectations on them, and it's not their fault that they don't fulfill it, and they don't even know what it is, you know? So release. Quit expecting people to be a certain way. I am the worst at this. I know.
I agree.
I am. I will take it. I know.
That's one thing we agree on.
Yeah, I do agree, and I have to work on that, because if someone tells me, you know, I'm the worst about it. If someone tells me they're going to do something, you better do it. That's just, I guess that's the way I grew up. Ella is the same way. It drives me nuts, and I just see myself in her, you know, because I'll tell her, I'll pick you up. This happened last week. I'll pick you up, and then Brandon's picked her up. I'm not going with you. My mom said she was picking me up. I mean, you know, she expects me to do what I say, and I'm the same way. I expect, you know, that, and it gets me in trouble all the time, because I internally get mad. You know, why do you say something and then you don't do it? You know, I have a plan, and my plan has been messed up, but all that is because I expect certain things that I put on you that you should.
One of the big things that we put on each other is we put on and just people in general, is that we have needs that only God can meet, and your spouse was never going to be God. And I mean, I'm pretty good at being a husband, but I'm never going to be God, right? And so, like, you can't expect, you're needing these deep things from God, these deep healings, these deep satisfactions. The word saved, sozo, actually means to be made whole. And a lot of people are like, you complete me. Well, that's just not true. There's no human that completes anybody else. You know, your husband isn't your other half. I've been lost and you're my other half. That's in the movies. That's crap. That doesn't work. When you try to make someone your other half, they're going to fail you and disappoint you. God completes you. Being made whole is saved, sozo. Made whole. God takes what is incomplete and makes it whole and complete. He finishes what we were as unfinished people, and your spouse can never save you. Quit putting that on them, and you're going to be able to get along a lot better. One of the other things that's really, I think, important in conflict is when you reach this decision, and this decision of where it goes from here, the climax of conflict, and it can come down to blows, it can come down to leaving, it can come down to divorce, it can come down to any number of things that can go really bad, really fast. But when we reach those places, a lot of times we reach those places because we think we know what their reaction is. We'll play out these conversations of conflict in our head. So, like, this isn't the first time you've had this fight. You've been having this fight for like a week. It's just the first time you've actually had it. If I'm going to say this, and then he's going to say this, then I'm going to say that, and he's going to say that, and I'm going to say that, and he's going to say that, and I'm going to say that. And all of a sudden, man, you've just got yourself worked into a frenzy. And so you've created this whole idea of and so you've come into the conflict already decided what he was going to say or you were going to say, and all the decisions were made. We have to go in to conflict resolution when we start to do that. And guys, I'm not talking just about marriage, man. We have conflict with our bosses. We have conflict with our neighbors. We have conflict with our roommates. We have conflict with our friends. We have conflict with our kids. We have conflict in our lives. You are a human being. You are surrounded with conflict. You have to get better at dealing with it. And so as we deal with it, we have to listen. It's so hard to listen because listening is not hearing and thinking about what you're going to say.
Next.
I hate getting cut off in the middle and it's like, no. Oh my God, man, and then I want to just shut down and I just, and it just like, it's like you're not listening to what I'm saying, like I'm trying to communicate to you, and we have to listen. We have to listen. Right after
Brenda said, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Listen half as much as you talk. That's the point. But James, if you read on in James there, he talks about being slow to anger. You know, like get your emotions in check. And women are a lot more emotional and guys are a lot more compartmentalized. We can just section off, oh, this is the crappy part of my life, and we put red tape over that and we avoid that one. And like it's like, and women are like, women are like spaghetti. And so everything's tied together. And so you gotta take, you gotta not be reactive, and you gotta take emotion out of it. But guys, it will get heated. It's okay to be passionate. I think, it's okay to be driven. It's okay to want something so bad that you're willing to stand up and fight for it. And here's the thing: it's all negotiation. It's all conflict resolution. It's all working together. There's some things she's passionate about. And I've learned over the years that when we enter in these conflicts and she's so passionate that there may be something I don't know about that. So maybe this time we give that way. And then next time I'm so passionate, that it's like she understands, oh wait, this is something that really matters. This is important. And that's where we give of ourselves. And when we do that, we're able to walk through those things. When you walk away, you did not resolve anything. You chose to drive a wedge into your relationship. The Bible says, don't let the sun go down on your anger, your wrath. Like it talks about basically don't go to bed angry or not speaking or whatever. But it's more than that. It's like, don't just quit in the conflict till you work it through to a resolution. And here's the thing: you are going to fail at conflict. You will. You're going to get mad. You're going to get angry. You're going to get emotional. You're going to say things you didn't mean. He's going to say things he didn't mean. You're going to fail. Okay, you're not going to. When it reaches that place and you blow and it's like, I'm done. Well, there's something else after that. There's forgiveness. And forgiveness is hard for us because it makes us swallow our pride and go and say, you know what, I wronged you. Or, I was wronged by you. One of my favorite verses that's so hard for me, it's one of those things that just is one of the most difficult things ever for me. But Paul's writing and he says, why can't you just let yourselves be wrong? Like, why can't you just let yourselves be wronged? God, you know how hard that is? Especially when you know you're right. It is hard. But if we learn to control this, then we walk more in the ways of God and our relationships can get better and stronger, man. Nobody likes to be around a confrontational person that is always right. If you notice everybody avoiding you all the time, you may be that type of person. And that makes things extremely difficult. we all have to give and we all have to take. You can't, you know, there's wins and there's losses and there's compromise and there's negotiation and there's, but at the end of the day, man.
There's makeup sex.
There is. See, I think that's the goal of conflict. I think makeup sex is the goal of conflict. If you're not having good sex, fight. Fight.
Just keeping it real.
It works.
You're red.
Well, that kind of came out of the blue. I had to think about that for a second. I don't think that's the goal of conflict. Maybe it is. Who knows?
Goodness, 70 times 7. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want. I think if you could take anything today, like if you can take this out, and I mean us as individuals, we need to get this. I don't care if you're married or getting divorced or getting whatever you're getting. You need to understand that it is not about you. That none of this is about you. And if we can become the less self-centered, self-absorbed, and self-focused we can become, the more we're going to be able to roll with the conflicts in our lives. And I'm not talking about compromising your beliefs and compromising your passions, and I'm not talking about being a whipping post either. Like, if you're in an abusive relationship, man, that's not God's will for your life. I'll tell you that. A lot of people are like, you can't do that. No, you aren't supposed to be abused, and that's not God's will and God's plan for you. But I'm talking about just regular marriage, regular relational conflict, the things like that we try to deal with. And so I think one of the things Celia's point is, you know, you cannot avoid. Avoidance is not erasing it. And probably for me, a lot of times let's grab the bull by the horns, you know, and a lot of times that's not good either. So I think what you have to do is learn to meet in the middle, learn to find that place of communication, of forgiveness, of empathy, of understanding, of forgiveness, of all of the things. And
if you can't sit down and have a conversation and talk this out, get a third party. I mean, you know, get someone that you respect, somebody that, you know, has got life going in the right direction, and for a counselor, and sit down and just say, help us talk this out. We can't do it, you know.
Yeah, most of the time, though, people that want counseling, they want a referee. Everybody goes to counseling to prove to the other person that they're right. And that's not the way it works. I think, though, that when we get into conflict, when we deal with conflict, if we will learn to embrace conflict with the goal in sight. Like, I mean, we need to understand what it is that this conflict is, where is it rooted, in both of our selfishness, or in my selfishness, or your selfishness, or what is it James said, or we want something that we don't have and we'll kill to get it, or you know, those types of things there in James 4. You can always go back and say, is this the root of this conflict? And what's the goal? Like, what's the root? Why are we here? And what do we want? Do we want it to be, do we want life or death? And I know you're like, I don't mean that it's going to kill you, but what do you want this to make your life better? You want it to make it worse? Because whatever decision you come to in the conflict is going to do one or the other. And here's what I find. Most people don't get divorced over one conflict. Most people don't split up. They have conflict and they make life worse. And then they have conflict again, they make life worse. They have conflict again, they make life worse. And it's a series of decisions made that lead to results of more decisions that are made that lead to worse results until at one point you're not in love anymore. It's not worth fighting for. And you're just like, what's the point? And when you get to that place, your marriage is really in danger. When you get to the I don't care point, or to the just do whatever point, your marriage is in danger. Your relationships are in danger. So we can't let them get that. We have to choose life in every circumstance. Now, we may not be happy with the resolution of that conflict, but if we take the right path and the one that we say, okay, does this line up with my future hopes and dreams? Is this taking us where we want to go in the big picture? One thing that you'll find in most conflicts is if you look at what is the result if they get what I want or if I get what I want, it doesn't matter. Your conflict is over the stupidest crap you could ever imagine, like paint color or something. You know what I mean? Stuff that just, in the scheme of things, it doesn't matter. Take a look back and see what you're giving up. For what gain? You know, and is it worth it? Are you willing to lose a friend over some of the things that you're dealing with? Over she stole my shirt or what? You know, sisters fight. You know, over crazy things I've noticed in my house, and that happens. Marriages. Parents and kids, man, that haven't spoken in years, and you go back and what are the roots of these conflicts? And it could be absolutely the most small, crazy thing. So I think just getting a perspective on it and not letting it build, avoiding it to where it just grows internally, and I think we'll be a lot better off. Again, everybody's going to face conflict. Every person. If you breathe air, everybody do this. If you're able to do that, then you're going to have conflict. You're probably either in it, coming out of it, or going into it. So every person is going to have it. Every conflict is going to come to a climax in where a decision is made, and every decision is going to lead to a path. And every one of those paths is either life or death. It's going to be healthy or unhealthy. It's going to give you where you want out of life, the things you want, or it's not. And that's just the realities of it. And you have to weigh, count the cost of the conflict. And then be able to forgive, be able to forget, be able to let things go, be able to compromise, be able to communicate. And then be able to have like great makeup sex. So that's all. Everybody okay?
In the future, we have several more weeks of this series, and I know I can't remember which week is which, but in the coming weeks we're going to have. We're going to talk about when you're dealing with a spouse that's addicted, and how you make it through that. We're going to talk about blended families, how you navigate those waters, because those can be kind of scary too. So we got more things coming. So y'all stay with us.
All right.
Stay with us.
You guys stand with us and let's pray for you.